I don't know, man. It sounded
I don't know.
awful
I don't know
like
if it's
Destiny
my.
played a
I
role
would need.
here.
I would need to see. I would need to see an art like paper about that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
unfortunately, I'm playing a game, so I don't have the ability to research right now.
Yeah, I mean, like definitely not right now, obviously.
I feel like you're only correct situationally because it definitely makes sense if there's like that sudden awakening moment where you see something for the very first time and you're immediately like, yeah, I'm into that. But I feel like there's also those situations where you see something and either there's no response or you're like, ooh, gross. But then after the 500th time you see it, you're like, you know what? Like, I
Oh,
wouldn't
that's
be surprised if there's a lot of people who are into incest only because Pornhub always gives you like 4 or 5 recommendations every time you go on that site of stepsister, stepbrother, stepfather, whatever.
What just collect like Pokemon cards?
Destiny played a huge role. I hope she's living well in Vegas these days.
Yeah, Destiny played a huge role for me too, but unfortunately Bungie is not treating her well these days.
Okay, so now we have to go back to.
Okay, let's stop turning Zero Stream into a degenerate furry hub.
Hey man, he already tagged it as such.
I mean,
Yeah, saying like the Yoisos are wondering like, hey, wait, you're a pirate. Why didn't you steal from us? And saying like, yeah, we don't do that.
I'm sorry, did you just assume that I would steal from you because I'm a pirate? Yeah, I show up and Shane flees the chat. Yeah, that sounds about right. I've known you for a brief time, kid, and I'm willing to say, yep, that sounds about right.
yeah, like in our Gartic phone game yesterday. Something about Gartic, it just makes my inhibitions go when we play that game, and I'm a little more comfortable
What game
doing
is that?
Gartic phone.
Never heard of it.
You ever heard of the game Telephone?
It's that, but with pictures.
Yep. So one person is given a prompt and they're required to draw it, and then their drawing is shown to the next person. They have no idea what the prompt is, but they have to draw their own interpretation of it based off the drawing that they see, and then so on and so on and so on. So the idea is that it slowly transforms over time. Like the first person might have gotten the prompt banana, and so they attempt to draw a banana. But because it looks a little weird and a little funky, the next person draws it a little bit different because they didn't realize it was a banana, they thought it was something else, and eventually someone thinks that it's like the handle of a telephone, and so they draw that with the full other part of the telephone too, and eventually you have an old timey rotary
Well, with Gartic
telephone.
phone, there's also and Gartic phone's a little different than in the normal mode. Like, it's prompt drawing. It's like you start with a prompt, and then it becomes and then the next person draws something based on that. And then it keeps on cycling like that, like prompt drawing. So like, someone would write a prompt to start off with, let's say, draw a cat, and then the next person would draw a cat, and then the next person would have to write, not draw, what they thought they were seeing. And then it sort of goes like that. So it's a little... there is a mode, though, in Gartic Phone where it is just drawing. I don't think we've done it in Rick's server, though. Unless we have... Do you recall us ever doing that?
Playing Gardic on Rick server?
Playing Gardic like with just pictures. I know we've done it with just writing. I don't think we've done it with just pictures.
No, I don't think we've done it with just pictures.
Or that's how they came up with One Piece's character designs.
I was gonna
I
say
guess.
it's all. I was gonna say all the thing is all Oda. Oda designed all of these things. It's one dude.
That's why it's so crazy. It's one dude slowly losing his sanity as he continues to make a manga that lasts forever and ever and ever.
Yeah, this manga's been
Yes.
going on since the 90s.
Before I was born.
Yeah, I was born in 1990.
I was born in 1997. Someone typed in typical JoJo cyborg and boom, Frankie.
Yeah.
No, that can't be it. Frankie's not a Nazi.
Jeez, freaking, yeah, freaking von
Stroheim.
Stroheim.
One of my
By
friends.
the way,
one of my
I love that guy. He's
one of
so
my
Hey
friends.
man, if German science was the best, why would we have had Operation Paperclip?
the alternative universe Stroheim is part of Operation Paperclip.
Who's to say that isn't our timeline?
Because Battle Tendency straight up tells you Stroheim died during Stalingrad.
So if he had survived that, then he might have become a part of the American military.
Exactly.
Like, he wasn't a scientist himself, but they probably would have kept him around to experiment on him and gather some data off of his modifications.
Well, I think that was the thing, was he actually built a lot of his own modifications.
Oh, well, yeah,
No, it
if that's the
wasn't-
case, then he definitely would have been...
It wasn't him doing that. It was the Speedwagon Foundation. It was the Speedwagon Foundation that did all the technological stuff.
Oh. So, it's Speedwagon that we have to blame for all this crap.
Just like the real world, the Speedwagon Foundation assisted the Nazis and nothing bad ever came of it.
Oh god, that makes too much sense. Makes too much sense. But I remember Vuly and I, when he first introduced me to JoJo, we talked about how Joseph eventually gets a robotic arm from Stroheim. And we talked about how funny it would be if, like, during the Stardust Crusader arc, Jotaro looks over, sees, like, a swastika on Joseph's arm, and is questioning him, like, Granddad, where did you get that? Why do you have that? He said, oh yeah, a friend of mine gave it to me. He was a German back in the war.
Which war?
It's like, Granddad, don't you know that those were the bad guys? And nonsense, grandson. Several of my best friends were Nazis.
So stupid.
Though, honestly, with Jotaro being Japanese, he probably wouldn't have much of an issue with it.
Honestly, yeah. Now, Abdul, on the other hand, and Polnareff.
Well, isn't Abdul, oh gosh, Arabic? Well, he's from
Egyptian,
Egypt.
specifically.
Yeah, modern Egyptians, though, are Arabic
Oh, by the
of
way,
descent.
Frankie's also a Blastoise.
Oh, yes, nice. Everyone,
Yeah, everyone is a little bit Nazi.
No.
No.
Just no.
Freaking Avenue Q.
But yeah, the Islamic world, Nazis are a fair bit more popular than they are in the Western world, so Abdul might
wow.
not have a problem with it.
That is
He
true.
might have a problem with it. He might not, though. As for Polnareff, yeah, also, continental Europeans, with the exception of Germans, most of them don't have quite as much of an issue as the Nazis as the rest of us do. Now, the Polish, they really hate Nazis due to them living under Nazi occupation for a long time.
That's scary since they're pretty popular all over here lately. Yeah. That's what Stardust Crusaders was missing, was a Polish member of the party. to butt heads with Joseph.
I wonder what Dio's genealogy is, because if it turns out that he's Jewish, then we have a bunch of Nazi sympathizers all ganging up to go and hunt down a Jewish man.
No, no, Dio
Unfortunately,
is
we know that
English.
he'll be, he's English.
Well, there were a lot of Jews living in England around the time, so he might be,
No.
partially English. He is full-blooded English, we do know that
Ah,
for a
dang
fact.
Yeah, because
we
he's
know.
from, the 1800s.
I'll be right back.
Well, like I said, even then. But, yeah, obviously the key fact here is Dio is a terrible person. Let's just get that out there.
Who?
Dio is very bad. We do not condone Dio.
Oh.
Yeah, no, he kills dogs. We don't like Dio.
And the actions of the Stardust Crusaders on screen are
I mean,
mostly
isn't Dio
just
a
acts of self-defense against terrible people, so... Yeah, Dio's not just a villain. Dio is just horrible. Yeah, if you don't know much about JoJo, yeah, Dio is an absolutely awful person.
Mhm. Yeah, I don't know much about it, admittedly.
Yeah, he has murdered a lot of people. I mean, as Aiden jokingly pointed out, he had a dog burnt alive in his younger days.
Oh.
He's
Yeah.
committed lots and lots of murders, lots and lots of rapes. He's a very, very bad person.
So he's a psychopath, basically?
Yes, very much so.
Yeah, that's part of his lore, is that he is just a straight-up grade A sociopath.
Yeah, I only know him from memes, and they do not, I guess they're memes, so they don't go into actual detail about who he really is.
Yeah, he has absolutely no sense of empathy whatsoever and will go out of his way to do terrible things to people just to upset them.
You thought your first kiss would be with JoJo, but it was with me, Dio.
Yeah, he straight up sexually assaulted a woman in order to upset his adopted brother.
Jeez.
Yeah,
Stardust
I'm
Crusaders
back.
is so good. Kids recommending Stardust Crusaders. Roshan.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, and
Stardust
also that was
Crusaders.
something that he did in his
Oh.
younger days before he became fully evil.
I mean, if I
So-
haven't... I mean, I think about JoJo is I have a friend who really likes JoJo, and he's been suggesting me to watch it for so long, and I've just been avoiding it.
I would recommend watching the first season.
Okay.
That would be Phantom Blood. The stuff
Phantom
with
Blood.
the stuff with Dio.
And also Phantom Blood, and also the second arc. What's the name of that one?
Battle Tendency.
Battle Tendency.
Yeah,
Jinx, you owe
Phantom
me a
Blood and
cola.
Battle Tendency. Both of those are in the first season, and in my opinion, those are the best season. Those are the best arcs. I haven't seen all of it, to be fair, but yeah, in my opinion, those are the best arcs.
I see.
Yeah, because part 3 and onward is where they introduce stands.
Stardust Crusaders is so good, Roshan. If you only see one season of JoJo, pick that one.
Okay.
That season 2, in my opinion, it's not as good as season 1. I mean, I would say watch season 1. If you like it, continue on to season 2 and just stop whenever you get bored.
I've heard from my friend that season 1 and 2 are both not that great.
So that's the interesting thing. If you ask JoJo fans, they typically do not like season 1 and season 2. However, they are objectively the best season.
Yeah, they are just straight up. They are just straight up the good ones.
I see why people like the other ones. They have a lot more flash to them. There's a lot more going on. But in my opinion, it's a lot of jangly keys. The actual good writing quality is in the first 2 seasons.
Interesting.
That's before Araki started to forget
Oh,
everything.
it very much disagrees.
The vulture lie.
Did you just assume my friend's gender? No.
It very much disagrees from what he's saying.
Honestly, I don't like JoJo that much, like at all. I like it for the memes, really.
And the
but
music is fantastic.
music's fantastic. If I were to suggest stuff to read or watch from JoJo, it would be Battle Tendency.
Oh, that is
Maybe
that's nice. Just bowling balled them.
Either battle tendency or parts of Diamond is Unbreakable, the 4th part. Skip everything else.
Diamond is Unbreakable has my
Steel Ball
favorite
Run.
villain. Diamond is
Steel
Unbreakable.
Ball Run.
Steel Ball Run is only manga. It's not been released as an anime yet.
Mm-hmm.
It's the next one to be released because they just finished up Stone Ocean.
Yep. The first one, Phantom Blood, is quite good. It is a bit of a combination of Les Miserables and
Fist of the North Star.
Oh yeah, a fair bit of Fist of the North Star influence, but in terms of its plot structure, Les Miserables and Dracula.
I see.
It takes a fair bit more inspiration from classical literature. It's much more tightly designed. It does have some problems, like the magic system feels slightly inconsistent and it's difficult to explain. But as Kip Foxboy points out, Jonathan is absolutely fantastic. Great character, fun to watch. He doesn't have a lot of depth to him, but he's a lot of fun.
Okay.
He's just a good boy. He just wants to be a good guy.
Yep. I also feel like Dio's at his best there. He's intimidating, but he's not over the top, and he's a nice slow burn villain. When we're first introduced to him, he's clearly a bad person, but he feels like possibly if he goes down the right life path, he could end up becoming a good friend to Jonathan and possibly like a sort of buddy secondary protagonist. But you just watch him devolve into being fully evil until he finally, I guess minor spoilers, abandons his humanity and then goes full evil and then just starts reveling in how dark he's become, which is fun.
Jeez, these enemies are everywhere.
I like the moment he decides to forsake his humanity because he knows there's no going back. Yes, quite good. There's some nice build up to that, good character motivations, some nice intrigue going on, and yes, very nice moment. Lots of drama building up to it, lots of good writing supporting it. Very nice moment. And it leads to a very climactic battle, which I enjoy immensely. There's some good animation going on, very nice dialogue, and just excellent symbolism. Very nice, very nice. Mm-hmm. Still Season 1, but Arc 2 with Battle Tendency, it's lacking some of that intrigue and symbolism to a degree, but it makes up for it with some excellent fight scenes and some very likable characters that are very fun to watch. But it also is where we get our first hints at Araki's writing style of being just over the top, like a bit of a combination of Zack Snyder style writing with, how to even explain it? But it's like a bit of Zack Snyder full of himself with One Piece level ridiculousness, possibly.
Okay.
The one thing Stardust Crusaders was flashy but skimped on the feels a bit more. Yeah, Stardust Crusaders, for the most part, is a series of one fight after another that are pretty fun to watch. I have a couple of problems with it, though. One, there's sparse few character moments among those fights, and also most of those fights end the same way.
It ends with the main character who's 16 years old, but he's built like a 30-year-old on steroids.
Yes, he looks like he has a mortgage. He looks like he is halfway through his mortgage and is raising his second son. Funny as crap, though. I loved old Jonathan. Yeah.
Old Jonathan, though, not Jonathan, Joseph. Old Joseph.
Yeah, old Joseph. Mm-hmm.
He's kind of hit and miss because on some points you can see where he was, Joseph Joestar from Battle Tendency, and then other times he's just a completely different character.
Yeah, a lot of times he's the silly old man, which I feel like it could have been kind of funny to have that character who's the goofy old rich man who's Jotaro's grandfather, but it would be nice if he was like his grandfather from his father's side, this goofy older man, and then occasionally have a little bit of the actual Joseph, who's another character. I feel like that would have satisfied a lot more. As is, it feels like he's very rarely the Joseph Joestar that we've gotten familiar with over I think like a dozen episodes, maybe 2 dozen episodes. And a lot of times he just feels like this completely new character who's fun and interesting, but just not the same guy.
And then there's part 4 Joseph, where he's just extremely old and like
that is, if there was anything I can tell you when you start Diamond is Unbreakable, skip where they bring back Joseph, because Jesus Christ, they kill Joseph in that. They just ruin his character.
The older I get, the more I appreciate silly old men who deal with life by being goofy instead of jaded. Yes, I actually do like that about Joseph. That actually does feel like Joseph. He doesn't seem like the type who would have gotten jaded and dejected by life and gone the Luke Skywalker route. Ugh. Instead, he feels like someone who would be just silly, funny, possibly pulling some pranks on his grandson, telling him some corny jokes, ripping him a little bit. That feels like Joseph.
What even happened in the 9th movie of that franchise? I didn't watch it because
so they built 1,000 Star Destroyers and decided to blow up the entire galaxy because you might as well just be the emperor of a pile of rubble, because, why the hell not? And then they make a fantastic argument for the Second Amendment, because the army of Star Destroyers is defeated by a bunch of people with their privately owned warships.
I see.
Literally.
Okay, I do have a question though. Has the
Lando Calrissian is enough to save the galaxy?
Yeah, I'll admit I've never been very into Star Wars, so
it completely understandable. Star Wars, in my lowly opinion, is not fantastic. It's not great, really.
Yeah,
I think
there's something about the world building that's always bothered me about that franchise.
Yeah, exactly. The world building in that franchise has never been.
It just
good,
feels very. It just
the world
like
the world building is very hit or miss.
It just doesn't feel very. Like I'm a person who values like. If a franchise has like an inconsistent world, I lose interest very fast.
Oh,
Yes.
then you'll hate JoJo. You'll hate JoJo with a passion.
Oh.
Probably. A lot of times in Star Wars, we get like these little hints at bigger things that's like, ooh, I really like that. Like the Sith Empire, the old Jedi Civil War, things like that. It's like, ooh, very nice. Like, we have these long-standing conflicts between these large factions. We have a fair degree of understanding of their motivations, their worldviews, shit like that. Technology being used in interesting ways, little setups like here and there. It's like, yes, I love this a lot. And like the Mon Cala people and stuff like that, it's like, ooh, this is very interesting. And then you also have other writers that come through and it's just like, how do we fill in some background history here and stuff so that these conversations feel more fleshed out? I don't know, let's just say some shit. And it's just like, oh, okay then. Alright, you did that.
It doesn't help that my first experience of Star Wars was Phantom
Menace.
Yeah. Because that came out when I was a kid. So that was, I think, one of the first movies I ever watched, because I think my parents must have taken me or something, or we must have seen it at home or something like that. I don't know.
Same. My father's a big Star Wars fan, so the prequels were some of the first films that I remember watching in theaters.
Yeah. I don't know. I've never, and I like sci-fi settings, but something about Star Wars has always just
Well,
never clicked with me.
a big problem is that Star Wars is only a half sci-fi setting. And that's the thing, is that its sci-fi aspects are very important to the story and are absolutely integral to it. You cannot take them out. But also, it is more so a fantasy setting, which is absolutely integral to it, and you cannot screw with that. And the problem is, the majority of the writers who get their hands on Star Wars, since Star Wars is a big collaborative effort with a lot of different voices adding their own writing to it, most of them are either like, yeah, this is a fantasy setting, we can add all this fantasy stuff to it, and it's like, no, this is a sci-fi setting. You can't just do whatever the fuck you want. You gotta follow the sci-fi lore. And then other ones are like, yeah, this is a sci-fi setting. We can do all this sci-fi stuff. And it's like, no, this is a fantasy setting. You can't just do whatever you want. You gotta remember the fantasy aspects of it.
I mean, Final Fantasy makes the double sci-fi fantasy thing work.
Yeah, I think that's
The
a
thing
good
with
comparison.
Final Fantasy is there's no like set lore or concrete story, so every entry is free to just say, "No, I don't want to touch any of the sci-fi stuff. Let's go full fantasy." Or,
That's
what
true.
if it's all sci-fi and the fantasy stuff is completely explained away with technology instead?
Yeah, as someone who has only ever played one Final Fantasy game and just knows about it from talking with other people, it seems like Final Fantasy's big thing is that each numbered entry is sort of its own continuity that might take elements from other games, but for the most part is its own entirely unique setting and its own
Yeah.
entirely unique take
Yeah.
on the
Yes,
general plot lines.
That is true. They are not. There's no continuity. There's no direct continuity between them.
Exactly.
The only eternal FF lore is dubiously dressed girls and ridiculous swords. Now that's not true. There's also dubiously dressed boys. Do not forget that, Kid Foxboy.
Oh yeah, there's also dudes that are just straight up women.
By the way, we have. By the way, anyone remember freaking like Fist of the North Star? Freaking dude in gold
Yes.
armor.
Was it God, what was his name? Grow or
Rao.
Guru? Rao.
It's Rao.
Thank you. Rao.
I mean, the closest thing you get in Final Fantasy to a franchise is the MMOs, which have a long-running story.
Yeah. I think probably the best way to explain what happened to Star Wars is imagine if they actually tried to have some sort of consistent timeline and directly state that all Final Fantasy games are canon to each other. There is some kind of continuity here, but good luck on you piecing it together. And then also they released a bunch of fan fiction where like they just found some different fans of the series that had wrote some fan fiction was like, yeah, this is good, stamped the seal of approval on it, fixed it for grammar, and then published it, and now it's canon to the franchise forever.
Hmm.
It's like the Zelda franchise where they tried to piece all the games
That was
together.
such a bad idea.
Yeah, no, just these are different entries. These are different games with different continuity. Just stick with that.
Yeah,
I mean, there
some-
is a Zelda time. There is an official Zelda timeline.
and it's bullshit.
It is very much so. It is stupidly bullshit.
So, my take on it is if a Zelda game directly mentions the events of another Zelda game, then they are canon to each other. If it does not, they are not canon. For example, Link to the Past and Link Between Worlds are canon to each other. Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask are canon to each other. Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, and Wind Waker and Spirit Tracks are all canon to each other because they all make mention of each other. Oh, and Phantom Hourglass. All those all make mention. They're all canon.
Hmm.
But then Twilight Princess, not canon. Skyward Sword, not canon. Breath of the Wild, not canon. I know Nintendo officially says that they're all canon to each other, but no. Oracle of Seasons and Tears of the Kingdom are not canon to each other. Just no.
And I'm gonna go ahead
You have
and
to argue
say
with-
this: if you're
The
going
problem
by
though is that according to the people who make it, it's canon. So it's a bit of a.
Yeah, as Kid Foxboy points out, Miyamoto has his Always Sunny in Philadelphia conspiracy board trying to explain how all these Zelda games are connected to each other.
yeah, one of the things that I have is the Legend of Zelda manga, and the Legend of Zelda
Yeah.
manga actually, more specifically, Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess manga does make mention of the events of Ocarina of Time. Because it talks about how Zelda gained information about what Ganon was going to do in the future, and they used that as the impetus for Ganon being arrested and thrown in the Twilight Realm. Ganon gaining the memories of of his future self from the Ocarina of Time.
Eh.
And by
Yeah, I can see some additional ones being connected, but still, like...
and also what? Okay, which then leads me to the next question: what's the situation with the Stalfos that trains Link? Then is he not the Ocarina of Time Link?
Yeah, because that means that either Twilight Princess is canon or Majora's Mask is canon. It really can't be both.
It's possible that even after the events of Majora's Mask, Link still got lost in the dark in the Lost Woods, still trying to find Navi.
Well, I mean, probably the way that you square that circle is in the opening to Majora's Mask, Link does die, ends up in the realm of Majora, goes through all that bullshit, and then when he's finally fixed that shit and all that's done, his soul then returns back to his dead body, where now he exists as a ghost to eventually train the Link of Twilight Princess.
Mm-hmm.
Which is fucking depressing, so I hope that's not canon, but you know.
I mean,
Yeah, that's
from
like
what the game says,
the
that does
problem.
seem to be the case.
Yeah,
Sometimes I really dive into lore, other times I just want to hang out with hot goat grandpa.
I need to swap out Usopp. Let's see here. He's a power type, so I need Zoro.
Yeah, we weren't trying to leave you out, kid. We saw your messages. It's just everything was going by so fast.
Majora's Mask is one of the best stories, though, for real. Yeah, that's solid.
It's still one of the best. Like we're not here to judge the individual quality of each story. It's more just this doesn't make sense if it's part of an interconnected universe.
Yeah, especially, like, my big thing that I go back to is just look at the map. There are major regions of Hyrule that just disappear in between timelines, which, like, how the hell does that work?
I'm not saying like that it's good that they're all canonly connected, but that is their official position. I think that's more of a writing problem than anything.
Yeah.
That they should have tried to shoehorn it in with Skyward Sword for starting in Skyward Sword, and then it works in the context of Skyward Sword where the map is very vague about where everything is, because you're flying around in the sky and there's no like there's no continuity between the different zones. But then when you get to something like the Ocarina of Time map, where there is explicit continuity, or Twilight Princess, where there is explicit continuity and you can like directly go between zones, that's where you get issues.
Yeah. Let me see here.
It's just more of a writing. It's just because they kind of just tried to shoehorn it in, and even though it's like it is 100% canon that this is the case, it's just the canon isn't good.
Which, like, there's really not that much of a problem of just saying, yeah, this is a new game, we reimagined Hyrule slightly. It still is thematically Hyrule. It is still Hyrule in spirit, but this is a slight reinterpretation of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so